In the bustling hallways of Lincoln High School, life was anything but quiet. The sound of sneakers squeaking against polished floors, lockers slamming shut, and laughter echoing through the corridors created a chaotic yet familiar rhythm for the students. Among them was Emily Carter, a sophomore who navigated her days in a wheelchair. Her accident the previous year had left her unable to walk, and while she tried her best to stay positive, being different made her an easy target for bullies. Emily wasn't someone who sought attention. She preferred blending into the background, keeping her head down as she moved between classes. Her books were always neatly stacked on her lap, and her schedule was precise. She knew exactly when to leave. One class to avoid the rush of students, but no matter how careful she was, there were moments when she couldn't escape unwanted attention. And today was one of those days. It started like any other afternoon. Emily was heading toward her locker after lunch, her stomach full from the sandwich her mom had packed for her. She hummed softly to herself, trying to focus on something pleasant instead of the usual stares or whispers that followed her wherever she went. As she approached her locker, she noticed a group of students gathered nearby. At the center of the group stood Jason Meyer, the school's self-proclaimed king of mischief. Tall, broad-shouldered, and loud, Jason thrived on chaos. He loved being the center of attention, even if it meant stepping on others to get there. Jason spotted Emily almost immediately. His grin widened as he nudged his friends and pointed at her. "Hey, look who's rolling in," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Guess we know why they call this place Lincoln Slow now." His friends laughed, though some looked uncomfortable, glancing at Emily with pity before quickly looking away. No one wanted to cross Jason, not even the teachers, who often turned a blind eye to his antics. Emily felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She tightened her grip on the wheels of her chair and tried to ignore him, focusing instead on opening her locker. But Jason wasn't done. He stepped closer, blocking her path. "What's the matter, Wheels? Can't take a joke?" he taunted, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. Emily flinched, clutching her books tighter. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air, but there was nowhere to go. The tension escalated when Jason suddenly gave her wheelchair a hard shove. It wasn't just a playful nudge. It was forceful enough to send Emily rolling backward, crashing into a row of lockers. The impact knocked her books onto the floor, scattering papers everywhere. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Emily struggled to regain control of her chair, tears welling up in her eyes. The hallway fell silent, save for the faint sound of Jason chuckling. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Everyone watched, unsure of what to do. Some students glanced at each other nervously, while others simply stared at their shoes, unwilling to meet Emily's gaze. It wasn't uncommon for kids to turn a blind eye to bullying. It happened all the time. But today felt different. Maybe it was because Emily was already vulnerable, sitting in her wheelchair, unable to defend herself. Or maybe it was because everyone could see how scared she was. Just as Jason turned to walk away, clearly pleased with himself, a voice cut through the silence. "Leave her alone." The words were calm but firm, commanding enough to make Jason stop in his tracks. Standing a few feet away was Marcus Johnson, a junior known for his quiet confidence and unwavering sense of fairness. Marcus wasn't part of any particular clique. He didn't play sports, join clubs, or chase popularity. Instead, he spent most of his time observing the world around him, noticing things others overlooked. Today, what he noticed was injustice. Marcus walked over to Emily, kneeling beside her to help gather her scattered belongings. His movements were deliberate, his expression unreadable. When he finally looked up at Jason, his dark eyes held a steely determination. "Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" Marcus asked, his tone steady. There was no anger in his voice, just a quiet authority that demanded respect. Jason sneered, trying to maintain his tough guy persona. "Stay out of this, Johnson," he warned, taking a step closer. But Marcus didn't back down. Instead, he rose to his full height, towering over Jason despite being only slightly taller. "You're better than this," Marcus said simply, his words cutting deeper than any insult could. Think about what kind of person you want to be. The two boys locked eyes for a long moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Jason muttered something under his breath and stormed off, shoving past the crowd that had gathered. The hallway remained eerily quiet for a few seconds before murmurs began to ripple through the students. Some whispered about how brave Marcus was, while others wondered if he'd gone too far. But one thing was certain. Marcus had changed the dynamic of the entire situation. As Marcus helped Emily back into position, handing her the last of her books, she managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded, offering her a reassuring smile in return. "You didn't deserve that," he said softly. And with that he turned and walked away, leaving behind a scene that would soon become the talk of the school. Little did anyone know, this single act of courage would set off a chain reaction, a ripple effect that would touch countless lives, and transform Lincoln High in ways no one could have predicted. The moment Marcus stepped forward, the energy in the hallway shifted. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to Jason's aggression, and it was clear that he wasn't going to back down. As he knelt beside Emily to help her gather her scattered books, his action spoke louder than any words could. He didn't yell or raise his voice, instead his quiet strength seemed to command attention. The students who had been frozen in place now watched intently, their curiosity piqued by this unexpected turn of events. Jason, on the other hand, was visibly irritated. He hadn't expected anyone to challenge him, least of all Marcus Johnson, who rarely drew attention to himself. Jason prided himself on being untouchable, someone no one dared to cross. But here was Marcus, calmly standing up for Emily without a hint of fear. Jason tried to brush it off, muttering something under his breath about not needing any lectures. But Marcus wasn't fazed. Instead, he continued helping Emily, making sure she had everything she needed before turning his full attention to Jason. "You think you're funny, pushing people around like that?" Marcus asked, his tone measured but firm. "What did she ever do to you?" Jason hesitated for a split second, caught off guard by the directness of the question. He quickly recovered, however, sneering as he replied, "Mind your own business, Johnson. Nobody asked you to step in." Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying Jason with an intensity that made the bully shift uncomfortably. "Maybe not," Marcus said after a pause. "But sometimes doing the right thing means stepping in when nobody asks you to." The simplicity of Marcus's response hit harder than any insult could have. It wasn't angry or accusatory. It was matter of fact, almost as if Marcus were speaking to Jason like a teacher addressing a student who had made a mistake. For a brief moment, Jason looked unsure, glancing at his friends for support. They avoided his gaze, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Even they could see that Marcus had the upper hand, not because he was physically stronger, but because his confidence came from a place of integrity. Jason tried to regain control of the situation by taking a step closer to Marcus, attempting to intimidate him. "You better watch yourself," he growled, pointing a finger at Marcus's chest. But Marcus didn't flinch. If anything, he seemed even calmer, his expression unchanging. "And what are you going to do?" Marcus asked, his voice steady. "Push me next? Go ahead, see where that gets you." The crowd surrounding them held its collective breath. No one moved, no one spoke. Everyone waited to see how Jason would respond. Would he escalate things further, or would he back down? After several tense seconds, Jason let out a frustrated grunt and turned away, storming off down the hallway. His friends followed closely behind, casting nervous glances over their shoulders as they left. As soon as Jason disappeared around the corner, the tension in the air dissipated. Conversations erupted among the students, everyone eager to share their thoughts on what had just happened. Some praised Marcus for his bravery, while others expressed disbelief that anyone had finally stood up to Jason. A few whispered about whether Jason might retaliate later, but for now, the immediate danger had passed. Emily sat quietly in her wheelchair, still clutching her books tightly. She hadn't said a word during the entire exchange, too overwhelmed by emotions to speak. Part of her felt embarrassed by the spectacle, but another part, a larger, growing part, felt something else entirely. Gratitude. Someone had actually stood up for her. Not just stood up, but done so with such quiet conviction that it left her speechless. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked gently, breaking the silence between them. Emily nodded slowly, though tears were still glistening in her eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, really." Marcus offered her a small smile, one that was warm and reassuring. "You don't deserve to be treated like that," he said simply. "No one does." Then, after a beat, he added, "If anyone gives you trouble again, let me know. You're not alone." Those last words lingered in Emily's mind long after Marcus walked away. She replayed them over and over, finding comfort in their sincerity. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe things could get better. Maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought. Word of Marcus's intervention spread quickly throughout the school. By the end of the day, nearly everyone had heard about what happened in the hallway. Some students approached Marcus to thank him, calling him brave and admirable. Others teased him lightly, joking that he was becoming the school's unofficial superhero. Marcus took it all in stride, brushing off the compliments with modesty. He didn't see himself as a hero. He had simply done what he believed was right. But not everyone reacted positively. Jason's cronies grumbled about Marcus ruining their fun, and a few students whispered that he should have stayed out of it. "He's just asking for trouble," one girl muttered during lunch, glancing nervously toward Jason's usual table. Her friend shrugged, replying, "Maybe, but at least he stood up for someone who couldn't fight back." Even the teachers began discussing the incident in hushed tones. Mr. Thompson, the history teacher, brought it up during class the next day, using it as an example of moral courage. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy," he told his students. "It takes guts to stand up for others, especially when it might cost you. But those moments define us. They show us who we really are." Marcus didn't hear Mr. Thompson's remarks since he wasn't in that particular class, but the sentiment resonated with many students. Slowly but surely, attitudes started to shift. People began paying closer attention to how they treated each other, realizing that their actions mattered more than they'd realized. And while it was impossible to change everyone overnight, the ripple effect of Marcus's decision to intervene was undeniable. For Emily, the days following the incident marked a turning point. She found herself smiling more often, even laughing, with classmates who had previously ignored her. When she joined the art club, a suggestion from her best friend Sarah, she discovered a passion for painting that gave her a new sense of purpose. Her artwork became a way to express emotions she struggled to put into words, and soon she was spending hours sketching and experimenting with colors. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to go about his life as usual, never seeking recognition for what he had done. Still, he noticed subtle changes in the way people interacted with him. Teachers greeted him more warmly, and students who had once overlooked him now sought him out for advice or support. Strangers thanked him in passing, telling him how much his actions had inspired them. Though Marcus appreciated the kind words, he remained humble, reminding himself that he had only done what anyone else should have. But perhaps the most surprising development came from an unexpected source: Jason Meyer. After lying low for a few days, Jason resurfaced with a chip on his shoulder, determined to reclaim his reputation. Yet there was something different about him. A flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, a hesitation in his step. Whether he realized it or not, Marcus's words had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, forcing him to confront questions he'd rather ignore. Was he really as untouchable as he claimed? Or was there more to life than bullying others? Little did anyone know, these questions would soon lead to choices that would shape the future of Lincoln High and the lives of everyone involved in ways no one could have anticipated. In the days that followed Marcus's confrontation with Jason, Lincoln High School buzzed with a mix of excitement, curiosity, and tension. The story of how Marcus stood up to the school bully had spread like wildfire, igniting conversations in classrooms, hallways, and even the cafeteria. For some students, it was a moment of inspiration, a reminder that courage could come from unexpected places. For others, it was a source of unease as they wondered what Jason might do next. Emily, for her part, felt a shift she hadn't anticipated. Before Marcus stepped in, she had spent most of her time trying to stay invisible, avoiding eye contact and keeping her interactions to a minimum. But now, something inside her began to change. She noticed small acts of kindness from classmates who had previously ignored her, a smile here, a kind word there. It wasn't overwhelming or dramatic, but it was enough to make her feel less alone. One day during art club, Emily found herself working on a painting inspired by the mural project the school had recently announced. The theme was Unity Through Diversity, and students were encouraged to submit designs that reflected inclusivity and community. As she sketched outlines of interconnected hands reaching across a vibrant background, she couldn't help but think about Marcus. His quiet bravery had reminded her that even the smallest actions could have a profound impact. "Wow, this is really good," Sarah said, peering over Emily's shoulder. Sarah was one of the few people who had always been kind to Emily, and their friendship had grown stronger since the incident with Jason. "You should totally submit it for the mural contest." Emily hesitated, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't know, what if no one likes it?" Sarah rolled her eyes playfully. "Are you kidding? This is amazing. And besides, it's not just about winning, it's about showing everyone what you're capable of." Encouraged by Sarah's enthusiasm, Emily decided to take the leap. She poured her heart into the painting, adding intricate details that told a story of resilience and hope. When she finally submitted her design, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced in years. Whether or not she won didn't matter. She had created something meaningful, and that was enough. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to go about his life as usual, though he couldn't ignore the ripple effect his actions had caused. Students approached him regularly, asking for advice or sharing stories of their own struggles. Some confided in him about being bullied, while others admitted they wanted to stand up for someone but didn't know how. To each person, Marcus offered the same simple guidance. Just start small. Sometimes all it takes is saying, "Hey, stop," or offering a kind word. His humility only added to his reputation. People admired him not because he sought attention, but because he genuinely cared about making a difference. Even teachers began involving him in discussions about creating a safer, more inclusive environment at Lincoln High. Mr. Thompson, the history teacher, invited Marcus to speak at an upcoming assembly focused on empathy and leadership. At first, Marcus declined, insisting he wasn't the right person for the job. But when Mr. Thompson explained that his perspective could inspire others, Marcus reluctantly agreed. As the weeks went by, Jason remained a looming presence in the background. He hadn't directly confronted Marcus again, but his behavior grew increasingly erratic. He picked fights with smaller kids, made snide comments during class, and generally acted like someone who felt cornered. Rumors circulated that he was planning retaliation, though no one knew exactly what form it would take. One afternoon during gym class, tensions boiled over. Marcus was shooting hoops with a group of friends when Jason stormed onto the court, his face red with anger. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he shouted, pointing a finger at Marcus. The other students stopped what they were doing, forming a loose circle around the two boys. Marcus didn't react immediately. He set the basketball down and turned to face Jason, his expression calm but alert. "I'm not a hero," he replied evenly. "I just did what I thought was right." Jason clenched his fists, clearly frustrated by Marcus's composure. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what that feels like?" For a moment, Marcus considered walking away. He knew engaging with Jason wouldn't solve anything. It might even make things worse. But then he remembered Emily's tear-streaked face and the countless other victims of bullying who never got the chance to speak up. If he backed down now, what message would that send? "You want to talk about humiliation?" Marcus asked, his voice firm but controlled. How about we talk about how you humiliated Emily, or all the other people you've pushed around? That's not leadership, Jason. It's cowardice. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Jason's jaw tightened, and for a split second, it looked like he might lunge at Marcus, but instead he took a step back, shaking his head. Whatever, he muttered before storming off the court. The confrontation left everyone shaken, including Marcus. Though he had handled the situation calmly, he knew it wasn't over. Jason wasn't the type to let things go easily, and Marcus braced himself for whatever came next. Despite the lingering tension, positive changes continued to unfold throughout the school. Inspired by Marcus's example, students began speaking out more often when they witnessed bullying. A group of seniors started an anti-bullying campaign, organizing workshops and creating posters with slogans like "Kindness starts with you" and "Stand up, speak out." Teachers incorporated lessons on empathy and conflict resolution into their curriculums, encouraging open dialogue about difficult topics. Even the administration took notice. Principal Grayson called a school-wide meeting to address the recent incidents, acknowledging the need for systemic change. "Bullying isn't just a problem for the individuals involved, it affects our entire community," she said during the assembly. "We owe it to ourselves and each other to create a culture of respect and understanding." Her words resonated deeply with many students, including Emily. Sitting in the auditorium alongside her peers, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things really could get better. After the assembly, Marcus found himself surrounded by classmates congratulating him on his speech. He had kept it short and to the point, focusing on the importance of standing up for others without casting blame or judgment. "It's not about being perfect," he had said. "It's about recognizing when something isn't right and having the courage to say so." As the crowd dispersed, Emily approached him, holding a sketchbook close to her chest. "I just wanted to say thank you again," she said softly. "For everything." Marcus smiled, shaking his head. "You don't need to keep thanking me," he replied. "You're the one doing incredible work with your art. Have you heard back about the mural yet?" Emily's cheeks flushed with a hint of pride. "Not yet," she admitted. "But either way, it feels good to try." "That's all that matters," Marcus said warmly. "Keep going. You never know who you might inspire." As they parted ways, both students carried a shared understanding. Change wasn't easy, and it certainly didn't happen overnight. But every small act of kindness, every brave decision to stand up for what was right, brought them one step closer to a brighter future. And in a world that often felt divided, that was something worth fighting for. The confrontation between Marcus and Jason during gym class didn't end with fists flying or angry shouts echoing through the halls. Instead, it concluded with Jason storming off, leaving behind a tense silence that lingered long after the bell rang. But the repercussions of their exchange were far from over. What had started as a personal clash between two students quickly became a school-wide issue, forcing everyone at Lincoln High to confront uncomfortable truths about bullying, accountability, and the culture they allowed to thrive. Principal Grayson wasted no time addressing the situation. By the next morning, an announcement came over the intercom calling both Marcus and Jason to her office. Students whispered excitedly as they speculated about what might happen next. Would Jason get suspended? Would Marcus be praised for standing up to him? Or would the whole thing be swept under the rug like so many other incidents before it? When Marcus arrived at the principal's office, he was surprised to find not just Principal Grayson waiting, but also Mr. Thompson, the history teacher who had invited him to speak at the recent assembly. The presence of another adult made the meeting feel less intimidating, though Marcus still braced himself for whatever was coming. "Marcus, thank you for coming," Principal Grayson began, gesturing for him to sit. Her tone was calm but serious. "I want to start by saying how proud I am of the way you've handled yourself throughout this entire situation. Standing up for someone takes courage, especially when it puts you in the line of fire." Marcus nodded, unsure of what to say. He hadn't expected praise. He was simply doing what he believed was right. Still, hearing those words from the principal meant something. It validated his decision to step in, even when things got messy. "Principal, Grayson continued. That said, we can't ignore what happened yesterday in the gym. While your intentions were good, confronting Jason in such a public setting could have escalated into something much worse. We need to address the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. Mr. Thompson chimed in, leaning forward slightly. What Principal Grayson is saying is that we see potential in you, Marcus. You've already inspired so many students with your actions and your words. Now we're asking if you'd be willing to help us create lasting change, not just for today, but for the future of this school. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't looking for recognition or responsibility, but the idea of contributing to something bigger than himself appealed to him. After a moment, he nodded again. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do what I can. Meanwhile, Jason's meeting with Principal Grayson took a different tone. When he walked into her office, his usual swagger was replaced by sullen defensiveness. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest and his jaw was clenched as if preparing for battle. Jason, Principal Grayson began, her voice firmer this time. We've reached a point where we can't keep ignoring your behavior. Pushing, Emily intimidating other students, disrupting classes. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern and it needs to stop. Jason rolled his eyes, muttering, whatever. Everyone's always blaming me for everything. Principal Grayson raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Do you really believe that? Do you think people are making this up? Because let me tell you, Jason, there are consequences to your actions. Every time you lash out, you hurt someone else, and you damage your own reputation in the process. For once, Jason didn't have a snarky comeback. He stared at the floor, his fingers tapping nervously against his arm. Principal Grayson softened her tone slightly. Look, I know you're capable of better, but you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Are you going to keep letting anger control you? Or are you going to take responsibility and make a change? She outlined the disciplinary measures, a week-long suspension, mandatory counseling sessions, and participation in a community service project aimed at promoting empathy and inclusion. Jason groaned at first, clearly unhappy with the punishment, but deep down he knew he couldn't argue. For the first time in a long while he felt cornered, not by Marcus or anyone else, but by his own choices. Back in the hallways, news of Jason's suspension spread quickly. Some students cheered, glad to see justice served, while others expressed concern about whether it would actually make a difference. Emily, for her part, felt conflicted. On one hand, she was relieved that Jason wouldn't be around for a while. On the other hand, she wondered if punishing him would truly solve anything, or if it would only push him further into anger and resentment. As the days passed, the school administration worked tirelessly to implement new initiatives aimed at fostering a more inclusive environment. Workshops were organized, bringing in guest speakers to talk about topics like emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and the impact of bullying. Posters went up around campus, featuring quotes about kindness and unity. Even the cafeteria table seemed less segregated, as students from different groups began sitting together more often. Marcus played a key role in these efforts, though he never sought the spotlight. He helped to design activities for the workshops, sharing insights based on his own experiences. During one session, he stood in front of a group of freshmen and told them a story about a time he'd witnessed bullying but hadn't intervened because he was too afraid. I regretted it later, he admitted. Not because I got in trouble, but because I knew I could have made a difference. Don't let fear stop you from doing the right thing. His honesty resonated deeply with the students, many of whom approached him afterward to share their own stories. One girl confided that she had been teased relentlessly for her accent when she first moved to the area. Another boy talked about being excluded from sports teams because he wasn't athletic enough. Listening to them, Marcus realized how widespread the problem was, and how important it was to keep pushing for change. Emily, too, found herself stepping into a leadership role. When the results of the mural contest were announced, her design was chosen as the winner. The school provided materials and support, allowing her to work alongside a team of volunteers to bring her vision to life. Painting the mural became a collaborative effort, with students from all grades pitching in. As they worked side by side, laughter and conversation filled the air, breaking down barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Even Jason, despite his initial resistance, began to show signs of growth. During his suspension, he attended several counseling sessions, where he learned strategies for managing his emotions and understanding the impact of his actions. At first, he dismissed the exercises as pointless, but over time, he started to open up. He admitted to feeling insecure and overlooked, using aggression as a way to mask his vulnerabilities. It wasn't an excuse, but it was a starting point. When he returned to school, Jason kept a low profile, avoiding confrontations and focusing on completing his community service hours. He joined a local park cleanup initiative, working alongside classmates who barely acknowledged him. Though the experience was humbling, it also gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Slowly, he began rebuilding trust, one small step at a time. By the end of the month, Lincoln High felt different. The atmosphere was lighter, the tension less palpable. Students greeted each other with genuine smiles, and acts of kindness, big and small, became more common. Of course, challenges remained. Not everyone was ready to embrace change, and old habits died hard. But progress, no matter how incremental, was undeniable. For Marcus, the transformation was bittersweet. He was proud of what he had accomplished, but he also knew the work wasn't over. As he walked through the freshly painted mural corridor one afternoon, he paused to read the inscription Emily had added at the bottom. "Together we rise." It was simple yet powerful, a reminder that real change required collective effort. Standing there, surrounded by vibrant colors and hopeful messages, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of pride. He hadn't set out to be a hero, but in standing up for Emily, he had sparked something extraordinary. And as he looked around at the faces of his peers, smiling, laughing, connecting, he realized that sometimes the smallest actions really did have the power to change everything. As the weeks turned into months, the changes at Lincoln High School continued to unfold in ways both subtle and profound. What had started as a single act of courage by Marcus had grown into a movement, a collective effort to reshape the school's culture and create an environment where everyone felt valued. For Emily, Marcus, Jason, and countless others, this period marked a time of growth, reflection, and healing. Emily found herself stepping into a role she never imagined, that of a leader. The mural she designed quickly became the centerpiece of the school's new initiative for inclusivity and unity. Every day during lunch or after classes, groups of students gathered around it, adding their own touches, painting small symbols, writing messages of encouragement, or simply admiring its beauty. The mural wasn't just art, it was a living testament to the power of collaboration and acceptance. Working on the mural gave Emily a confidence she hadn't felt since her accident. She began speaking up more in class, sharing her thoughts without hesitation. Her teachers noticed the change and encouraged her to join the student council, where she could have a voice in shaping school policies. At first, Emily hesitated, unsure if she was ready for such responsibility. But with Sarah's encouragement and Marcus's quiet nod of approval, she decided to give it a try. Her first meeting was nerve-wracking. Sitting at the table surrounded by older students who seemed so sure of themselves, Emily worried she wouldn't measure up. But when the discussion turned to ideas for improving accessibility on campus, she spoke passionately about her experiences, navigating the school in a wheelchair. Her insights sparked a lively conversation, and soon plans were underway to widen doorways, install ramps, and make other necessary adjustments. By the end of the meeting, even the most skeptical members of the council were impressed by her determination and vision. Marcus, too, continued to inspire those around him, though he remained humble about his role in sparking the school's transformation. He didn't seek leadership positions or accolades, but his influence was undeniable. Students often approached him for advice, whether it was about standing up to bullies, dealing with personal struggles, or finding ways to contribute to the school community. Marcus listened patiently, offering guidance without judgment. "You don't need to be perfect," he would say. "Just do what you can, one step at a time." His involvement in the anti-bullying workshops deepened as well. Alongside Mr. Thompson, He helped develop activities designed to foster empathy and understanding among students. One exercise involved pairing participants with someone they didn't know well and asking them to share a story about a time they felt excluded or misunderstood. Many students admitted afterward that hearing each other's perspectives opened their eyes to challenges they hadn't considered before. Even outside of formal programs, Marcus's presence made a difference. During basketball practice, he noticed a freshman being teased for missing shots. Instead of joining in the laughter, Marcus walked over and offered tips to improve the boy's technique. "We all start somewhere," he said with a smile. The gesture might have seemed small, but it meant the world to the younger student, who began showing up to practice with renewed enthusiasm. Jason's journey, however, was far more complicated. Returning from suspension, he faced a mix of skepticism and indifference from his peers. Some whispered behind his back while others avoided him altogether. It stung, but Jason couldn't blame them. He knew he'd earned their distrust. Still, something inside him wanted to prove them wrong. Maybe not to everyone, but at least to himself. His mandatory community service hours provided unexpected opportunities for self-reflection. Working alongside classmates at the park cleanup, Jason discovered a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years. Picking up trash, planting trees, and restoring trails gave him a purpose beyond the chaos of high school drama. For the first time, he realized that actions, not words, were the key to earning respect. One Saturday morning, as Jason shoveled mulch near the playground, he struck up a conversation with another volunteer. Emily. She had joined the project, as part of her student council duties, bringing along a group of friends to help. When she saw Jason, her initial surprise gave way to curiosity. They talked briefly about the work they were doing, avoiding heavier topics like the incident in the hallway. But as they parted ways that day, Emily extended an olive branch. "Thanks for helping out," she said sincerely. "It means a lot, to me." Comment stayed with Jason long after the event ended. It wasn't forgiveness, it couldn't undo what he'd done, but it was acknowledgement. And for someone desperate to rewrite his narrative, acknowledgement was a start. Back at school, Jason began making tentative efforts to repair his reputation. He apologized to a few students he'd bullied in the past, though not all of them accepted his apology right away. He joined the robotics club, hoping to channel his energy into something productive rather than destructive. Slowly but surely, he started rebuilding trust, one interaction at a time. For Principal Grayson, watching these transformations unfold was both rewarding and humbling. She held monthly meetings with student representatives to discuss progress and identify areas for improvement. Attendance rates were up, disciplinary incidents were down, and surveys showed a significant increase in students feeling safe and supported at Lincoln High. While there was still work to be done, the shift in the school's atmosphere was undeniable. 1. Afternoon. During one of these meetings, Principal Grayson addressed the group with a warm smile. "None of this would have been possible without each of you," she said. "Change doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen without effort. You've shown incredible resilience and compassion, and I'm proud of everything we've accomplished together." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present. For Emily, they reinforced her belief that she could make a difference despite her challenges. For Marcus, they reminded him that standing up for others mattered, even when it felt like no one was paying attention. And for Jason, they offered hope, that redemption was possible, even for someone who had made so many mistakes. As the school year drew to a close, preparations began for the annual spring fair. This year, the theme was Unity Through Diversity, inspired by Emily's mural. Students worked tirelessly to organize booths, performances, and activities that celebrated the unique talents and backgrounds of their peers. Emily coordinated an art exhibit featuring pieces created by students throughout the year, while Marcus helped set up a storytelling tent where people could share their experiences of overcoming adversity. On the day of the fair, Lincoln High buzzed with excitement. Families, teachers, and students mingled freely, enjoying food, music, and laughter. At the center of it all stood the mural, now fully complete and surrounded by flowers planted by the gardening club. As Emily gazed at the masterpiece she had helped create, she felt a surge of pride, not just in herself, but in the entire school community. Nearby, Marcus watched as younger students ran their hands over the mural's textured surface, tracing the interconnected hands and vibrant colors. He thought about how much had changed since that fateful day in the hallway. Back then, he couldn't have imagined the ripple effect his actions would have. Now, standing amidst the joy and camaraderie of the fair, he understood the true power of courage and kindness. And then there was Jason standing quietly off to the side, observing the festivities with a mixture of awe and regret. He hadn't expected to feel welcome here, yet several students greeted him warmly as they passed by. When Emily spotted him, she waved him over. "Come see the mural," she said with a grin. "You should be proud. You helped make this happen." Jason blinked in surprise, unsure how to respond. But as he looked at the mural and at the smiling faces around him, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he belonged here after all. Not because he deserved it, but because he was willing to try. And sometimes, trying was enough. As the sun dipped, below the horizon casting golden light across the courtyard, Lincoln High felt transformed. Not just physically, but emotionally. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared, but they had begun to heal. And in their place stood a brighter, stronger community, one built on empathy, resilience, and the unwavering belief that change was always possible. As the final weeks of the school year unfolded, Lincoln High School felt like a place reborn. The once toxic atmosphere had given way to something warmer, more inclusive, and undeniably hopeful. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, misunderstandings, and setbacks, but the overall transformation was undeniable. For Emily, Marcus, Jason, and their peers, this period marked not just the end of an academic year, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Emily stood at the center of it all, her confidence blossoming in ways she never thought possible. The mural she had designed now served as the heart of the school, a symbol of unity and resilience that inspired everyone who saw it. But beyond the artwork itself, Emily's leadership had become a beacon for others. Her role on the student council had grown, and she found herself advocating not only for students with disabilities, but also for anyone who felt marginalized or overlooked. One of her proudest accomplishments was spearheading a peer mentoring program. The initiative paired older students with younger ones, creating opportunities for guidance, friendship, and support. Emily worked closely with teachers to ensure the program addressed real needs, from helping freshmen adjust to high school life, to providing resources for students struggling academically or emotionally. On the day the program officially launched, Emily stood before a packed auditorium, her voice steady as she spoke about its purpose. "This isn't just about helping each other get through tough times," she said, looking out at the sea of faces. "It's about building connections, showing that we're stronger together than we are alone." When she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Even Principal Grayson wiped away a tear, visibly moved by Emily's words. Marcus, too, continued to leave his mark on the school, though he remained humble about his contributions. His involvement in the anti-bullying workshops evolved into something larger, a student-led movement called Stand Together. The group organized events, hosted discussions, and created safe spaces where students could share their struggles without fear of judgment. Marcus often took a back seat during meetings, letting others take charge, but his presence was always felt. He was the quiet anchor who reminded everyone why they were there, to lift each other up. During one particularly memorable meeting, a freshman named Mia shared her story of being bullied online. Her voice trembled as she described the hurtful messages and the isolation she'd felt. By the time she finished, tears streamed down her face, but so did those of many others in the room. One by one, students approached her afterward, offering hugs, kind words, and promises to stand by her side. Later, Marcus pulled Mia aside and handed her a small notebook. "Write down your thoughts," he suggested gently. "Sometimes putting them on paper helps you process things." Mia nodded, clutching the notebook tightly. Weeks later, she returned to the group, proudly showing off poems she'd written about overcoming adversity. Her courage inspired others to open up, turning Stand Together into a true community of healing and growth. Jason's journey was perhaps the most remarkable of all. Though he still carried the weight of his past actions, he had made significant strides toward redemption. His participation in community service projects became a regular part of his routine, and he even began volunteering at a local youth center after school. There, he helped younger kids with homework, played games with them, and listened to their stories. Watching him interact with the children, no one would have guessed he was once known as the school bully. At Lincoln High, Jason's efforts to rebuild trust slowly bore fruit. He joined the robotics club, immersing himself in building projects that required teamwork and problem-solving. At first, his teammates were wary, but his dedication won them over. During one competition, when their robot malfunctioned minutes before the final round, Jason stayed calm under pressure, working tirelessly alongside his teammates to fix it. Their last-minute repair earned them second place, and while the trophy was nice, the real victory was the bond they formed. Still, Jason knew he couldn't erase the pain he'd caused. In a heartfelt letter to Emily, he expressed his regret for pushing her wheelchair that day in the hallway. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he wrote, "but I want you to know I'm trying to be better, for myself and for everyone else." Emily read the letter quietly, her eyes welling with tears. She didn't respond immediately, but a few days later she invited him to help paint a section of the mural. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was a step forward, a chance for Jason to contribute to something beautiful. The spring fair, held on the last day of school, brought everything full circle. Families, teachers, and students gathered on the lawn, celebrating the progress they'd made together. Booths lined the pathways, showcasing art, science experiments, and cultural displays. Performances filled the air with music and laughter, while food trucks offered treats that brought smiles to every face. At the center of it all stood the mural, now surrounded by flowers and twinkling lights. Emily gave a short speech, thanking everyone who had contributed to its creation. "This mural represents us, all of us," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Our differences, our struggles, and our dreams. It reminds us that we're stronger when we stand together." When she stepped back, Marcus took the microphone. He thanked Emily for her vision and acknowledged the countless students who had worked alongside her. Then, in his characteristic, understated way, he turned the focus outward. "Change doesn't come from one person," he said. "It comes from all of us, working together, even when it's hard. So let's keep going. Not just here, but wherever life takes us." The crowd cheered, and as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Jason stood quietly near the mural. He traced his fingers over the section he'd painted, a swirl of blue and green meant to represent renewal. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging. Not because he deserved it, but because he was willing to try. As the night drew to a close, Principal Grayson addressed the students one last time. "This year has been challenging, but it's also been transformative," she said. "You've shown incredible strength, compassion, and resilience. Remember that change is a journey, not a destination. Carry these lessons with you, and continue making the world a better place." Her words lingered in the air as the students dispersed, hugging friends and saying goodbye until next year. For Emily, Marcus, Jason, and the rest of Lincoln High, the future felt brighter than ever. They had faced adversity head-on, learning valuable lessons about courage, empathy, and the power of standing together. And though challenges lay ahead, they knew they could overcome anything, as long as they faced it together. In the months and years to come, the legacy of that pivotal school year would live on. Emily went on to pursue a career in art therapy, using her talents to help others heal. Marcus became a mentor and advocate, inspiring countless young people to find their voices. And Jason? He stumbled occasionally, as everyone does, but he kept moving forward, determined to prove that people can change if given the chance. Lincoln High School was forever changed, not because of one act of bravery, but because of the collective effort of its students to create a culture of kindness and inclusion. What started as a single moment in the hallway grew into a movement that touched countless lives. And as the graduating class threw their caps into the air, they carried with them the knowledge that sometimes stepping up, even in the smallest way, can truly change everything.